Live from our hurricane headquarters with real-time analysis from some of the nation's top meteorologists, this is Tracking the Tropics, powered by Bose Electric.
We have our first cone and new models coming in this hour on Potential Tropical Cyclone 9 with a track taking the system to Florida this week as the next name up on the list, Hurricane Helene. We are live on Tracking the Tropics in your hurricane headquarters with the very latest that you need to know. And of course, our meteorologist coming up here on WFLA now. Welcome in, folks. JB here with you alongside WFLA Max Defender 8 meteorologists Rebecca Barry, Chief Meteorologist Jeff Berardelli. Good to have you with us. It's going to be a lot of conversations this week here on Tracking the Tropics with Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. Of course, that's the designation for the system that we are tracking. That's 2 hour west, but we do have a track now that takes it up through Florida, and we're going to bring you the latest. As we go through the latest here on the program, you can, of course, type in your questions. We're going to be doing a meteorologist Q&A coming up here in a few minutes. You can type in your questions for Jeff Berardelli, Rebecca Barry with #KJeff, #KRebecca. We'll also look for #KJB. But first, I want to get to the forecast because as of 11 o'clock this morning, Rebecca, we have a cone from the NHC.
Absolutely, and it's for Potential Tropical Cyclone 9. So that's a fairly new designation, and it's for situations exactly like this. We haven't seen the actual system forming yet, but it's so close to land that they needed to start to issue watches and warnings. And also, when they have this designation, they can start to issue forecast products for it as well, like those spaghetti model plots, like this forecast cone. And they are flying some Hurricane Hunter aircraft through it this afternoon. I think when the Hurricane Hunter aircraft data gets back, we'll either have Tropical Depression 9 or we'll have Tropical Storm Helene, depending on what they find. Not looking very impressive at this point, but as a potential tropical cyclone, this is what the 11 a.m. advisory that just got updated, a position update at 2 p.m. It's 110 miles to the south-southwest of the Grand Cayman. The maximum winds are at 30 miles per hour, that minimum central pressure at 1,004 millibars. And keep that number in mind because in a few minutes, Jeff Berardelli is going to be talking about the potential for rapid intensification and how strong this system could get and how low this minimum central pressure could go. And so just keep that in mind that right now as a weak system, it's around 1,000 millibars. It's moving to the north at 6 miles per hour. And so you can see it's getting a lot closer to Cuba. We're getting some of those outermost thunderstorms really starting to impact there. But they expect it to become a tropical storm, enter the Gulf, and then pretty quickly intensify into a Category 2 storm. So this is the Thursday 8 a.m. position right here, making landfall as a Category 2 storm, most likely in the Big Bend area. But also keep in mind, especially this far out, the cone is for the center of the storm. And so the center of the storm could be as far east as Tampa, as far west as the Panhandle, and especially since the storm looks like it's going to end up being a compact one, a very defined and central core there, that would mean vastly different impacts based on which side of the cone it took. Even if it took the center of the cone, what kind of effects we would see, not only in the Tampa Bay area, but also area across the entire state. And so right now, this is going to be racing back out through southeastern Georgia and weakening during the day on Friday. And the good news is it does move out quickly. It gets caught up in the upper level winds and pushed out very quickly. So it's not going to be one of those that sits there and drops a lot of rain over inland areas. When we take a look at the spaghetti models, and a lot of the 12Z or the afternoon forecast models are coming in, they're pretty compact, and they're pretty compact closer to the western edge of the Big Bend area right here, closer to Panama City. We have some outliers that bring you a little closer to Tampa. We have some slight outliers that bring a little bit closer to Panama City. But really, if you look at the compact lines there, that's where they're all zeroing in. Now, there's one thing that could change that dramatically, and that is if the center of the storm forms in a completely different position, even a couple of hundred miles a different position than where forecast models think they are. Because what forecast models do a terrible job of is predicting a system before it actually forms. So once we get that center point for all of the forecast models to really key in on, that's when we could see a big shift in all of this, unless it forms close to where it's expected to. And in that case, we will not see much of a shift. But that's the next point in my mind that I'm looking for is when it actually forms, how do the forecast models look on that next run? So right now we're comparing the GFS and the Euro, the two major systems, and the Euro is in red, the green is the GFS here, and they're pretty consistent, certainly agreeing more than they were last week with the Euro taking a slightly more western track than the GFS there. But then the GFS passing a little bit closer to the Tampa Bay area, the Euro getting a little bit closer to Panama City. This is Thursday afternoon, just before landfall. Certainly the dirty side of the storm from Cedar Key down to Tampa at that point, and then making its way onshore and dissipating pretty quickly as it moves off across southeastern Georgia and into the Carolinas. So not much disagreement between the GFS and the Euro. Just taking an hour-by-hour look, this is the graph model showing how compact the storm is. And so the graph model is a lot slower. If you think about it, the GFS and the Euro were already up in the Big Bend by Thursday afternoon, whereas the graph model is just now starting to pass by and passing by quite a bit more so offshore. And so that's another interesting factor of note there. The other thing to talk about is the potential for rapid intensification and how much fuel this system is going to have. So this is Potential Tropical Cyclone 9, about where they expect it to form, looking at the available ocean heat energy that it will have. So this is the fuel for the storm to potentially feed off of, and it looks like it will be excessive at best, certainly looking in the extreme range there. And so things starting to look a little scary when we talk about a storm in the Gulf with such low shear and high ocean temperatures.
Jeff, your thoughts as you see Rebecca go through those graphics. You're coming in here this Monday, really looking at these models coming in. What's something that stands out to you?
Well, I like the way that the models are kind of concentrated a little north of us, and right in the Big Bend area. I like it for us in the Tampa Bay area. I don't like it for the folks who would have to endure this storm. What I don't like is what I see in terms of the rapid intensification, the pressure, and the wind speeds that can be achieved by this storm. Rebecca showed you the graphic, which has ocean heat content, and actually it's at record levels. And the storm is forecast to push right over not only the Yucatan Channel there, but right over the Gulf Loop Current. So that's why the models are strengthening it. Now, you see the National Hurricane Center has this storm as a Cat 2 when it makes landfall, but you can pretty much guarantee once it obtains the name Helene, which could happen at 5 o'clock today or 11 o'clock tonight, then they are going to up that likely to at least a major hurricane. I say at least a major, I mean at least a 3. But I will tell you that some of our best hurricane models have it a lot stronger than just a Category 3. I won't go into the details necessarily right now.
All right.
But it's pretty, the storm strength is pretty scary. But JB, you asked me, the one thing that I like to see is that it hasn't trended east today. That's good news.
Okay, because we were talking about this system potentially hitting New Orleans maybe 4 or 5 days ago when these model runs were first starting to come in. Now we're moving more and more east. We're hoping that it doesn't move that much more east, of course, to where Tampa Bay is really towards the center of that cone. But Tampa right now on the fringe, really boundary on the east side of that cone.
You remember Hurricane Ian?
Yeah.
I mean, Hurricane Ian, Fort Myers was in the fringe of that storm for days and days and days and days, and then Ian decided to tuck in. And I say that, by the way, the anniversary of Ian is Saturday. So it's happening at around the same time that Ian happened. The only reason I bring that up is because this is the time of year when the steering currents start to change, and we start to get storms that instead of going straight north or going west towards Texas, they start curving a little closer to the east. So this is the time of year we would expect something like this.
From this point on in the program, folks, we are here to answer your questions. We're also going to continue to talk about the models as they come in. Again, this is our Monday edition of Tracking the Tropics. We're going to have a lot more coverage here on Facebook, on YouTube, over the course of WFLA.com, over the course of the coming days. Thursday is expected to be the landfall day as of now. Wednesday really is approach day, and Tuesday could be the day where we really get an idea as to whether or not the models are pointed all in the same direction, even though, as Rebecca noted, we have tremendous model consensus right now based on the spaghetti models. Let's get to the questions. You know how this works. If you use one of the hashtags on our screen, you can ask a question just like Mark here, hashtag KJB. When do we expect the track to further move east is the question here. Let's just kind of talk about the track, and if we can bring it up here, Rebecca, that would be very, very helpful. So we were talking about how this track has been shifting more and more to the east, but this is, at least right now, the center is going through Big Bend. What do we expect in the next couple of days here, Jeff, Rebecca?
I think that we could see some track changes when the system actually forms and they find that center of rotation. That would be the next point that we might see a big change in the track. Other than that, I think we're going to see the track tighten up because we have such consensus from the models. I don't foresee any giant shifts with that unless that center of formation is way different than what the models are seeing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a rule. The question was phrased in a way where it almost made it seem like it's going to shift east, and we don't know that by any means that it's going to shift east. Hopefully it does not for the Tampa Bay area. So I would just say what Rebecca said, which is once we find the center, that could be at 5 today, could be at 11 tonight, then not only will NHC have a better idea of where this is going, but once our computer models latch on to the new center, the next run, whenever that is, hopefully tonight's runs, we'll have that new information. And plus, by the way, we're sending hurricane hunters in right now. That will be new information that will go into the models as well. So I am expecting a shift of some sort based upon all those things. Cross our fingers that it doesn't come any closer to the Tampa Bay area.
Now, Rebecca noted, obviously, the dirty side of the storm, the side you don't want to be on from the eye, is really that east side. And so people asking questions like Kaylin here, #HAB, what does this look like for Newport Richey? That's a coastal town, coastal community. And depending on how much this hooks to the east, this is a town that, should really be monitoring this very, very closely in the coming days, right?
Yeah, and remember that we've had a couple of storms that have passed by, right? Idalia last year. This year we had Debbie, both similar tracks, both produced several feet of storm surge on the Nature coast, even more than that up north. This one could be very well a Cat 4 storm as it passes to the west of us. And if that's the case, then the storm surge is going to be significantly higher. So even if we don't get hit by the core of the storm, we could be talking about significantly more surge than we did, certainly with Debbie, and maybe even with Idalia.
Let's go to Care Bear. Already questions, people coming in saying, hey, should we leave? Should we evacuate? Now, Panama City Beach up on the Panhandle should obviously be paying very close attention to the storm. But guys, it's way too early to be talking about, actually evacuating. Having an evacuation plan and having an evacuation strategy, should you be encouraged to do so, though, is pretty important, right?
The only people that need to worry about evacuations today are those that are medically dependent on electricity and don't have a good form of transportation. That's the earliest people that need to worry about evacuating. If you have difficulty, if you don't have transportation, you can't get where you need to go, you need to start making those arrangements now. And if you're medically dependent on electricity.
Let's go to Amber. We're getting a lot of questions about Georgia. In our comments section. Amber wants to know about Georgia. I'm pretty close to the South Carolina border. Obviously, there's more states in play here, and if this does hit as a Cat 2, maybe even stronger than a Cat 2, Cat 3, or let's say Cat 4 hurricane, that could still bring hurricane force conditions to states regions like South Georgia, right, Jeff?
Yeah, but in this particular case, the question was about the border of South Carolina and Georgia, so hopefully by that time, and it will be a lot weaker than at landfall. It's forecast right now to be a tropical storm when it reaches that area. Now, if it's a Cat 4 when it comes on shore, again, that is a possibility, then obviously it'll be stronger than a tropical storm when it reaches the border of South Carolina and Georgia. But if you're further inland, you're in much better shape than you are if you're near the coast. But we do remember Hurricane Michael a few years ago, that was able to maintain its course straight into Georgia and did a lot of damage into, was it Alabama or Georgia? It was right near the Alabama-Georgia line.
Yeah, right there on the line.
But it was significant far inland, which is rare, but it was a strengthening. It was a Cat 5 when it made landfall.
Let's go to Dave. #HAB. What about Brooksville is the question from Dave.
Yeah, so again, the devil is going to be in the details here. We don't know for sure exactly what the impacts are going to be. The further inland you are, the better prepared you are. Rebecca has the wind gust forecast up there. But you can see that even though the storm is about 100 miles west of Indian Rocks Beach, we're seeing wind gusts to 86 miles an hour in St. Petersburg. And as that storm makes its way northeast, those wind gusts will translate up to places like Hernando Beach, and you can cut them down significantly as you go inland into Spring Hill and Brooksville. But I would just say, this is going to be a very strong storm, but the question really is, can it come any closer to us? We're going to see impacts either way, but believe me, a difference of 50 miles is the difference between, some minor damage and power outages to destruction.
I should point out that we haven't talked about this yet. Jeff's just getting in the last couple of hours. Rebecca's been working on a lot of these graphics. Wobble Tracker will be something that we will be deploying at some point in the coming days.
Yeah, probably today or tonight or tomorrow, depending on.
Yeah, and that, for those unfamiliar, that's a really powerful tool for us here at WFLA that we will be streaming nonstop. It's a tool that allows us to monitor real-time wobbles, basically, with the storm's center, the eye of the storm, versus the actual track that the NHC has put out. So we'll get an idea as to whether the storm is wobbling to the west, more towards the Panhandle, wobbling to the east, more towards Tampa Bay. And so we'll be streaming that on WFLA.com. So be sure to search for the wobble tracker. It's something that you can use and to great advantage. Here's an example from the wobble tracker that we had from Francine when it made landfall just south of New Orleans.
Yep.
I think Rebecca's pulling
Yeah, you
this
can
up
see
here
those
live.
wobbles right there.
That could be a big difference between one neighborhood
That's right.
versus another, one county versus another. So let's go to this question from Stacy, #KJB. What is Ocala, Florida going to feel? I'm traveling this week down south.
Yeah, in answer to that question, since we don't know exactly where it's going to go, we can't say for sure. But if you are traveling to Ocala on Thursday, that's probably not a great idea. Because if the storm's headed towards the Big Bend, and again, we don't know exactly where it's going to go, and this could change. But if the storm's headed towards the Big Bend, Ocala is going to get hit decently hard. So if you can avoid being in Ocala on Thursday, I would say that's probably a good idea.
We have a bunch of questions coming in about Polk County. Let's go to Crystal, #KJeff, just jumping in. How bad does it look for Polk? And then Donna Edwards here as well, asking, hey JB, what about Polk County? Now okay. So to your point, Jeff, we were talking about getting a little bit more inland. So Polk County a little bit more inland.
Yeah, this doesn't look like Charlie, right? Of course, anybody in Polk County that lived there during Charlie remembers it. It cut in through, Punta Gorda and went straight through as a strong hurricane into Polk County. This storm is going to be significantly northwest. I don't see any real chance of it tucking in that far south so that it comes through directly through Polk County. So that's the good news. But you're still going to get tropical storm force wind gusts, as Rebecca is showing you on the map right there.
And this is the GFS, so this was the one that brings it a little bit closer. So if anything, this airs a little more on the cautious side and shows the higher range of wind gusts that you might see. The Euro keeps it a little bit further offshore, and just like Jeff pointed out earlier, the difference of 50 miles is going to make a huge difference as to the impacts felt if it's 50 miles further offshore or 50 miles closer to us when it passes us by.
Let's real quick, you guys. I just wanted to check the 12Z on the Euro. Has that come in?
It did, and it wasn't much. It actually brings the storm right on shore at the apex of the Big Bend, like literally the apex of the Big Bend is where the Euro brings it on shore. So is that a shift slightly east, Rebecca, or pretty much just a slight east shift on the Euro?
Maybe slight, yeah. Imperceptible, but yes.
Yeah. In fact, if that position of the GFS is correct, then the new Euro would be literally stacked right up against the GFS, the same track.
You know what's wild about that? I mean, we're still a few days out. It's the GFS, the Euro, have really come into agreement here. I mean, separated by what a few dozen miles or so. But and then the spaghetti models were showing tremendous certainty, even 72 hours out. Is there a reason for that, Jeff?
So if you remember, if you're comparing it to what happened last week, we didn't even have a thunderstorm there. Like, there was nothing there. There was zero under the area that we were starting to watch. We knew the computer models were forecasting something there, and there was a lot of agreement on it. So we knew it was going to happen. But there was nothing there. So without anything being there, you would see a pretty large spread in the models. They're just trying to figure out, is this going to develop on the west side of the Yucatan? On the east side of the Yucatan? Is it going to develop off Nicaragua? Is it going to develop south of Cuba? So once that is now determined, for the most part, we have a much closer general area to where it's going to develop. Now the models are in lockstep with each other to some degree. I would caution against it, though. I would say that we may still see some unexpected. We always see, JB, as you know, unexpected shifts, right? I mean, it never goes exactly where we expect it to go 3 to 4 days ahead of time. Almost never.
Let's also, I don't think we... Rebecca, I might have missed it. Apologies if you had said it earlier. Are these warnings and watches? Well, not warnings yet, right? These are watches in effect?
Tropical storm watches.
Watches.
Yes.
So the orange and the yellow are...
I believe so, yeah.
Roughly the same. Governor DeSantis, I think, issuing, I'll check WFLA.com. I think we did send out a push alert. The state of emergency ahead of potential tropical cyclone 9. So the counties are, it's a long list of counties that DeSantis is covering here. And that's really because we're just not entirely sure where it's going to go.
This is going to hit. This is going to hit Florida, this storm. And it's likely to be a very strong storm. There's really, I think, very little chance that Florida, an extremely small, almost infinitesimally small chance that Florida avoids what is a significant hurricane hit here. So declaring a state of emergency makes sense because it is coming our way. It's got to go somewhere, right? If it's in the Gulf of Mexico, it's got to land somewhere.
We have a lot. we've got a lot of questions, you guys. So we'll try to stay on stream and extend this Q&A for a little bit. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, I might have to escape for a couple of minutes for the meeting.
Right.
Yeah, at about 5 minutes from now.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So, guys, we have a lot of questions in the queue, a lot of hashtag Hey Jeff, Rebecca, JB questions. Again, if you want to ask us a question, just use that hashtag with your comment here on Facebook Live. We'll try to get to as many as possible. But I should caution you as well, if we don't get to your comment today, we will have a lot more streaming coverage on Tracking the Tropics right here on WFLA.com and our social media platforms, really Tuesday, Wednesday, of course, into Thursday, which is expected to be landfall day. Let's get to this one from Kimberly, wanting to know about what the situation would be for a mobile home up in Hernando County.
Yeah, I need to know more specifically where in Hernando, because that does make a big difference. You know, winds are much stronger near the actual beach and near the coast, much stronger. Winds diminish very quickly as you move inland. So if your mobile home is on the east side of Hernando County, you may be okay, although I'd still make sure, I mean, it's a close call. and you might actually be told to evacuate mobile homes in that area. So just listen closely to authorities. If you're on the beach or anywhere near the beach in Hernando County, then you're probably going to have to be thinking about leaving.
Let's go to Vicky. Wants to know about Walton County, Florida, and the Choctawhatchee Bay and River there up in Walton County. And I'm just making sure that I have my county.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. Yeah, I just want to see exactly where that is.
Panhandle between Destin and Panama City Beach, Jeff, Rebecca.
That's probably going to be an area they're going to issue evacuations for. Right now, based on what the spaghetti models show right now, that would be in an area that could see more of a direct impact.
Let's see. I have a good question coming in here from Lucy's on it. Lucy has a really good question here that I'd like to get to. Hashtag Hey Rebecca, do you expect the forward movement to remain in the 6 mile per hour range, or will it speed up as it strengthens? We love this type of question on Tracking the Tropics because speed in relation to damage is so important of a conversation to have. The faster a storm is moving north or northeast, the more quickly it'll blow over us, versus a slow mover where it could drop a significant amount of rain and do a lot of destructive wind damage as it sits over an area for an extended period of time. So
it looks like it really starts to speed up Wednesday morning as it's moving through the Gulf. And so at that point, the forward motion will be faster than what we're seeing right now with that northeasterly around 6 miles per hour. You can see how close the icon's here at the beginning of the track, and that's because there's a lot more. It's going slower, so there's less distance that it's covering. It starts to really cover distance Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and then gets even faster than that Thursday into Friday. Just races into southeastern Georgia after that.
So that's a good thing, right? I
Great
mean, we don't. If it's gonna be hard, if it's gonna be bad, we don't want it to be bad for long.
Exactly.
Kiana wants to know, Jeff, how high of storm surge should we be anticipating?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where Kiana lives, but right now the National Hurricane Center already has 9 feet plus as a potential, anywhere from Tampa Bay north through the Big Bend area. That's what they have, and the scale ends at 9 plus. So it could be significantly more than that. Whoever this hits, and again, it depends on, is it Cat 2, is it Cat 3, is it a Cat 4? That'll determine it. We don't have those details right now, but I can say, I think I would be surprised if we ended up with less than 8 to 10 feet of surge in the Big Bend, and if it took this track and potentially further east, if it goes any further east. JB, I'm going to escape for a couple of seconds. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Okay? The live Q&A continues with Rebecca Barry and myself. Jeff will be cluing our team into the latest data, the latest information here in the WFLA newsroom, here with meteorologist Rebecca Barry. I'm JB Buno. Let's continue on with the conversation. Sally wants to know, is this a fast mover that Friday morning down in Northport I can put out stuff for a bulk pickup? Don't want it to be blowing down the road. Don't you hate that? You put out stuff for that pickup, and then before you know it, it's scattered in front of your neighbor's
homes. Then you're
homes.
that neighbor.
Yeah,
don't be that neighbor. I think it's a pretty fast mover. Let's take a look at 2 things. And so first we're looking at the track. So it stops raining here late Thursday into Friday. By Friday morning, this thing's in Atlanta. And so that's the good news. But let's look at the wind gusts on Friday, because that'll give us a better idea. And keep in mind, we're showing the most aggressive. We had to choose between the Euro and the GFS. I chose the GFS just to help us get a little more prepared, but it is reading at least 10 miles per hour higher than what the the Euro is because of distance there. So the GFS has this one scary time period where we see some 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts along the coast on Thursday afternoon, and then it backs down pretty quickly. So this is midnight on Friday. We're down to 30 and 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and then during the day, we're between 15 and 20 on Friday. So if you think your debris can handle 15 to 20 mile-per-hour wind gusts, the sustained winds are usually about half the gusts, half to two-thirds of the gusts. So 10 to 15 mile-per-hour sustained winds, 15 to 20 mile-per-hour gusts on Friday.
We got a few questions coming in about Crystal River. Alicia wants to know, #Hey Rebecca, Crystal River storm surge. As you know, we flood here all the time, and it's already going crazy in town. And then Maggie asking here as well, #KJB, will Crystal River, Florida be impacted? I work in a hospital in an evacuation zone. Yeah, for some people in certain careers, it's not as easy as just saying, oh, work's canceled, don't have to go. Like in our careers, we can't just miss work. We're working that day, no doubt.
And so a lot of it will have to do with how compact the storm is and how close it comes to our coastline. And that's something we'll have a better idea of over the next 24 hours. Of all of our counties, Crystal River has the best chance to be impacted because they're the furthest north and the closest to. And so our graph model cuts off right here Thursday at 2 a.m. And you can see how compact the storm is. And if it were to move straight northeast from there as the forecast model tracks, we wouldn't be getting the core of the storm, and that would really save us. And so that's what we're hoping for, is for it to remain just enough offshore that we're not going to see any serious damage. But what we are still going to get once the storm gets even with you, the winds shift and become onshore. So at that point, you still could see some significant coastal flooding, even if we didn't get the core of the storm in Crystal River.
We got a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment here. You ready for it? Ready for it? Charles says, #KJB, what percentage of people here in, I guess, the Tampa Bay area will buy all the water at Publix and then try and return it? No, don't be that person.
Just drink the water.
Don't be the person who loads up their shopping cart with, 4 12-packs of Publix water.
Only leaving the lesser desired brands for us.
Yeah, right. Brand of water is important. Some people would be like, water's water. I don't know. Like
not JB.
I'm a water snob. I like certain brands of water. Don't be the person, regardless of water brand, okay? Don't be the person that loads up the cart at Publix or Target or Walmart or Winn-Dixie or whatever it may be with all of the water and then checking out. If you get dirty looks, well, look at your cart. It makes sense as to why you're getting those looks. Jose wants to know, #KJB, it looks like the center, quote unquote, is a bit north of the initial forecast based on the 2 o'clock advisory. Any comment on that?
I've pulled up the corrected wobble trapper. I was able to reposition it, and I would say
you're doing real-time graphics building on the fly here.
We did do that. It looked a little messy for a second, but it's better now. I would say that it's very difficult to determine, even as a meteorologist, where the center might be from this. So I think that it's just still forming. It's just so early. It's great that we have the science to know that this was coming this far early, this far out, and we can talk about it this early, but we're also talking about something still that hasn't formed. And so there's more questions than answers at this point. If the center is further north, that would be interesting because it might cut off this northwestern jaunt a bit that it's expected to take. And we would be, unfortunately, looking for a shift in the track potentially further to the east if that were to occur. So it'll be interesting to see where the hurricane hunter find that center, and the model runs after the center is found are much, much better and much, much, much more reliable than the model runs prior to that.
Again, Wobble Tracker will be live on WFLA.com in the really coming hours, coming days. But again, it's a really great tool that will be live 24/7 as we track what is expected to become Helene. That's the next name up on the list, Helene. And wobbles will dictate ultimately how the track literally takes its shape between where it is presently located and of course the state of Florida. Let's go to Alexandra. #KJB. We really talked about Pinellas all that much, but yeah, St. Pete, Clearwater. These are areas look.
So
that Pinellas
is the
attention.
one with the scary wind gusts on the GFS. So, and this when we're talking about wind gusts. We could start to see wind gusts upwards of 40 miles per hour by 7 a.m. on Thursday. That's a threshold for bridges closing. And so that's what we always look for, is when those 40 mile per hour winds might start. But Pinellas has the potential to get the strongest wind gusts just based on the positioning. And also you're going to have the water moving off of the bay, which is a frictionless environment or a more friction-free environment, and then slamming into eastern Pinellas. So that's where we're getting that scary wind gust of 86 miles per hour on this GFS. So Pinellas will probably get the worst of the wind. And unfortunately, you have chances for flooding on all sides as the storm approaches you, because you have onshore winds at different directions because of the shape of your county at different times.
Yeah, Jessica asking us similar questions just about Pinellas County in general. We'll, of course, be focused a lot on our local counties here in the Tampa Bay area, but we are paying attention to some of our more northern counties all the way up through to Big Bend as well. We know that people are watching from across the state of Florida. We locally here on the airwaves hit the Tampa Bay market. But beyond that, we know that people from across Florida follow our live stream, so we'll be paying close attention to counties outside the Tampa Bay area as well. Let's go to Ashley. #KJB. Could the track change and come across the state like Hurricane Ian? I think it's important to state that while we do have, a fair degree of model consensus, Jeff made a point earlier that this could still change. I mean, a lot could change here.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially before a storm forms, you are more likely to see things change when the storm actually forms in terms of forecast models. And so one thing I'm worried about is what we saw with Ian and with Charlie, which is the friction of the rain bands moving on shore did cause it to seem to turn early. And so if the track is as it is now and it turned early, that would be a heavier impact for the Tampa Bay area. So I'm hoping the track tightens up a little bit and we get better model consensus that it will move even further offshore from us, because what we don't want is a Category 2 storm moving into the Tampa Bay area. That would be catastrophic. We're already going to be on the dirty side of this storm. And so the closer we are to the center of the dirty side of the storm, the worse things are. But I'm hoping that moving forward, we'll have more clarity on where the center is, and that'll help us give us a little bit more confidence in the track. And as the track tightens up, I hope we're able to tell you definitively, and maybe by tomorrow afternoon, we'll have this kind of information that where we're going to see the hurricane force winds, how far offshore it's going to be from us, because it's it's expected to be such a compact system. If it is further offshore from us, that would mean significantly less impacts, which would be good news.
Being rejoined here by Chief Meteorologist Jeff Berardelli. We're going to do another, I think, 5, maybe 6 minutes here on Tracking the Tropics. And while we're all here together, we'll go rapid fire through as many of these questions remaining in the queue. So you can type in questions with the hashtags you see all across your screen, #KJB, Rebecca, Jeff. We'll look for those. And really, you can fire them in now. We're just live adding them to the queue. The queue is built, but we are also putting in questions that are just coming in at this very moment. So I'm always looking here. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm always looking here at questions that are coming in. And then Jeff and Rebecca on standby to answer them and help with the graphics as well as we take you through Potential Tropical Cyclone 9 and what is expected to become Hurricane Helene in the days ahead. Before we begin the rapid fire going through the rest of the queue and some of the questions that are coming in at the end of our live stream here, one more time, because this is a revolving door of people coming in, we are going to be doing additional live streams of Tracking the Tropics in the days ahead. We'll have streams on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is predicted to be landfall day. So we'll be here interactively to answer your questions, whether you're joining us from Florida or maybe you're joining us from another state elsewhere in the country and you have family in Florida and you want to be able to give them good information or share a live stream and help keep them safe and informed. We're going to do our very best here to do as many live streams as possible. Jeff and Rebecca are always on broadcast TV and, of course, on WFLA News Channel 8 with the Max Fender 8 weather team. But when they have time, they're here in the palm of your hand to answer as many questions for you as possible. Let's go rapid fire through as many questions here as possible. #KJB from Jennifer. When will we have a better idea where this storm will hit? This is a really great question because people want to know definitively when we're going to have a really good idea as to where this storm is heading.
Well, we get a better idea as we get closer to the storm, but one thing Rebecca brought up before, and I'll bring up again, is when we get a fix on the actual center of the system. Remember, they didn't actually call this yet a depression or a tropical storm, and that's because we didn't have a fix on a center of circulation. We may have that at 5 p.m. That's going to help the National Hurricane Center's forecast, and once that information gets into the computer models, and once the Hurricane Hunter information gets into the computer models, once again, later tonight's models will probably be, I think, significantly maybe not significantly improved if they don't change very much, but if they do, then significantly improved, and then it'll be incrementally better as we get closer to the storm. Typically, I would say 36 to 48 hours out, it's fairly safe that the storm's probably headed in the direction we think it's headed.
I find this question to be just slightly humorous for a second. Chris wants to know, hashtag Jeff, any update from the meeting?
I got yelled at a lot. I mean, people were angry at me. I don't know why. So I would say that's the end. No, it's we're all battening down the hatches here, and we're going to be on top of this. Our whole team's going to be watching this very closely, and you're going to see us constantly. I think, JB, I'll probably stream tonight as well, just to make sure that we have a presence and we're constantly answering folks at home's questions.
That meeting, folks, was Jeff delivering news to the newsroom about the latest models, not him receiving anything, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Kristen wants to know, what are your thoughts on Riverview, Waimama areas? I think we talked a little bit about this earlier, but let's touch on it here again if we have a moment.
Well, both of those are generally inland. I don't know if Riverview has any bay-facing territory. Gibsonton is just to the west there. But, it really depends upon the track of the system. But, yeah, I think tropical storm force winds are likely, and if it comes close enough, hurricane force wind gusts are possible.
Let's go to Austin. Wants to know about, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Valdosta, Georgia?
Mm-hmm. Yep, Valdosta, Georgia. Probably going to rain in Valdosta, Georgia. I do think that by the time it gets to Valdosta, you're looking at diminishing winds and the diminishing potential for any true storm damage. It's most likely just going to be rain by the time it hits Valdosta. You might have to worry about an isolated tornado. It depends on how well it holds together. And I think a lot of that will have to do with if it's still getting stronger as it makes landfall, we could be looking at more of a potential for tornadoes across southeastern Georgia.
Man, a cruise sounds really good right about now, right? Doesn't a cruise sound good? Roger wants to know about leaving Tampa for a cruise on Carnival, leaving Thursday. That's
not going to happen.
Probably not looking great.
That's
right?
probably not going to happen. I can't imagine that would happen. Yeah, so I don't think that's happening. I think. Do you want to add anything to that?
I will say cruise lines are expert level at driving around storms. So if there's any way they can get out, they'll go. But
like maybe leaving Thursday night if the storm maybe moves a little faster.
Yeah, delaying it a bit, but getting in and out of port is going to be really rocky.
I wouldn't take me as a definitive word just to make sure your investment is safe. I would call the cruise line and make sure.
2 notes. I want to give Roger some hope. If it's all the way to the west edge of the NHC's cone,
there's going to be like 40-foot seas out there. I don't know.
Yeah. And then second, isn't it true that major cruise lines especially, they have their own meteorologists, don't they? I mean,
they do.
a big part of what they do, how they operate, right? To make sure the people are safe.
I know some cruise lines do. I don't know about every cruise line.
Why do you guys apply? That sounds like a fun job. Free cruises all the time.
I know a guy who works for, I think it's Royal Caribbean.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I would imagine you get free cruises, right? If you're a meteorologist for a cruise line, do you just get to cruise around the world?
I don't know the answer to that question. Yes, I think the answer is yes to some.
Sounds like a good job. Kathleen wants to know, a good meteorologist question: is there any chance that the storm that is on the other side of Mexico, John is the name, can cut through the land and join Helene?
No, and that's the good news. 2 tropical systems cannot join each other. They can't gang up and become stronger. Actually, one would just destroy the other one. And also, by the way, John can't, if it leaped over land, it would get destroyed in the process of moving over land. So thankfully, 2 hurricanes cannot merge into one.
Last call for questions on this Monday edition of Tracking the Tropics. Let's go to Misty. What about the Cedar Key area?
Cedar Key is probably going to be hit a little bit harder. It's a little bit further up the coast, closer to the Big Bend area, and you have the better potential for storm surge and hurricane force winds.
And Valerie is up next in the queue. Valerie, we got you. Wants to know on the other side of the state about Daytona Beach.
Daytona Beach are certainly safer than we are in the Tampa Bay area. That's for sure. You may just get tropical storm force wind gusts. You may just get some rain, maybe some outer bands, maybe an isolated tornado or 2. But as you can see, Daytona Beach is out of the worst of it. Now, again, we keep saying this, but if there's a 50-mile shift, that changes everything. But for right now, Daytona Beach dodges the worst.
Let's get like 2 or 3 more in, and then we got to wrap up this stream here, folks. Andy wants to know, what does West Palm Beach need to worry about power outages? I'll be out of town and worry Oh no, my ferrets. Oh man, protect the ferrets. Hashtag.
Yeah, keep the ferrets cool. I think West Palm's very unlikely to see power outages from this system. I think that would be a little bit of a stretch unless something drastically changed with this track.
Okay, let's go to, I'm just trying to hot load in as many questions as I can. Kathy, you're on deck. Kathy, hashtag Hey Rebecca. I noticed that Polk County isn't included right now in the state of emergency. Could that change?
If the track were to change, I could see that changing. But if the track holds true, I don't think the state of emergency would be necessary for Polk at this point.
All right. And we'll just touch on this one to kind of wrap up the stream. We know that we're missing a few in the queue here, but we're going to have to save them for our next live stream, folks. Hashtag Hey Jeff from Steve. What will the forward speed of the storm be as it passes Tampa Bay?
I think about 15 miles an hour. It probably will be even, and once it gets past of Tampa Bay, it'll probably be 20 miles. It's going to be moving fast. It's going to be accelerating. Probably 10 miles an hour west of Fort Myers, 15 miles an hour west of Tampa, and then probably 20 miles an hour once it reaches like Cedar Key.
Folks, we are going to be locked in on Potential Tropical Cyclone 9 all week long. We'll also, of course, be on air on WFLA News Channel 8 with Jeff Baradelli, Rebecca Barry, Eric Stone, Amanda Holly, Lee Spann, Val Simpson, the Max Fender 8 weather team on your local NBC station and CW station as well. And then right here in the palm of your hand with our streaming coverage on Tracking the Tropics. You can go to trackingthetropics.tv for the latest updates. Real quick, guys. Next steps. I mean, as far as what we expect in the hours ahead, you said that this could be Helene by 5 o'clock tonight.
Well, either that or it could be named. It could be a tropical depression. Could be Helene. I haven't seen the latest Hurricane Hunter info, but it's very possible. I would just say this. This track is likely to change some, even though the models are all in lockstep. Generally, we always have some kind of shift. So I expect there to be at least some, maybe back and forth, hopefully, not all the way here. But this is going to be, I think, an extremely strong storm in the Gulf of Mexico. So I think just pay really, really close attention to the latest information. Check in every 6 or 12 hours in case there are changes. And make sure you have your hurricane kit ready and your plan ready just in case, because that's how strong this storm is going to be. If it decides to take a turn to the right, well, all of a sudden then, we're in jeopardy. So that's why I'm not scaring anybody, just simply saying, be ready. This is not a storm you want to fool with.
Chief Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli, Rebecca Barry, JB here with you live on Tracking the Tropics. Folks, we'll have more episodes, of course, all week long. Our next episode, well, Jeff, I know you said you're going to try to stream tonight.
Probably to like 8:30 maybe tonight.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then we have our regularly scheduled Tracking the Tropics tomorrow. That's being Tuesday the 24th at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. So you can guarantee that we will be live then. Rebecca, I see you putting together here at the end a quick Hurricane Hunter
So he just was talking about the Hurricane Hunter, and so I just pulled up and loaded the most recent mission that's flying right now. So far, they've found a 10-second wind at 51 miles per hour.
Okay. So essentially then, theoretically, if they do name it at 5 o'clock, it will be Tropical Storm Helene.
Yeah, if they find that center of rotation closed and all the other things that they need to find. But as of right now, it looks like the wind is there.
We'll keep you posted all week long, folks. Look for Jeff's stream on the WFLA Facebook page, our partner Facebook pages tonight. And then, of course, our regular episode will be tomorrow, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. And we will have additional live streams, of course, in the days ahead. For Jeff and Rebecca, I'm JB. Thanks so much for joining us here on Tracking the Tropics. We'll see you next time. Be on the lookout for Wobble Tracker coming your way on WFLA.com.
Find Tracking the Tropics on these platforms. And for storm updates, the latest models, and helpful resources, visit trackingthetropics.tv.